All right, welcome back, students. We are going to be looking at A2 today, so essay writing, and we're going to be looking at the steps involved. Now, I'm going to begin by referencing back to A1 because I assume that you have some background in that assignment in those skills that are related to A2. So in an A1, you may have a source that you interpret, while in A2, we have a source that we analyze. But some of the steps are very, very similar. So for example, here's an A1 source. The state determines all that is morally, socially, materially valuable, therefore it is the right and obligation to monopolize all power and authority, controlling all aspects of society. The state functions as a protector of citizens, providing them with identities, welfare, and security in return for loyalty and obedience. No rights or freedoms should exist apart from the state. Service to the state, individuals and groups constitute one unified, integral whole working towards common goods. Thus, any notion that liberalism functions for the greater good is naive. So we have a source, right, in an A1, and these are the steps that we do. Identify the context. Consider the source's reaction to something. We can do the same thing with an A2. We can look at the language of an A2 source and say, this source is inspired by something. What is it inspired by? Is it a part of a chain in a sequence? Is there something that would happen before that inspires it? And is there some kind of change that they're trying to create? You know, what is the post-source world supposed to look like? You know, what kind of transformation are they looking to do? We can look at the theme of the source, try to identify the common themes. You know, does it support, challenge, or reject liberalism in Social 30? Does it support, challenge, or reject nationalism in Social 20? Does it support, challenge, or reject globalization or globalism in Social 10? You know, how does it support, challenge, and reject the themes of the course? You know, to what extent? The question that's presented to you will not be worded in a to what extent, but it inspires a to what extent conversation about the evolution of the major themes of the course. It's also important to unlock the significance of the source, and often we can see this by seeing that each source is presenting us with an issue that they see in society and a proposed solution. And the proposed solution that they present is their ideological perspective. And we can unpack the clues of the source to find that ideological perspective. With regards to the source, before we respond to it, we also must understand that there's a division of society surrounding the source, that there's an issue that they presented and a solution that they presented, but not everyone would agree with the solution. So much like we've done here with this A1 source, we're going to break down the language in an A2. So here it says the state determines. Right there you should pause and say the state. Opposed to what? Opposed to individuals and families and churches. The state determines all that is morally valuable. So where does that lead us? For example, Nazi Germany, indoctrination was used to alter the population's morals concerning euthanasia and genocide. So we can use the language, we can break down the language to find a perspective. But as we break the language down to find a perspective, we're also offering evidence to further that perspective. So when it says the state, we can assume that they are rejecting an individual shaped society or a family centered society or a church centered society. The state determines all that is socially valuable. We can also offer evidence like Brave New World as a possible application of the theory that's being offered in the source. For in Brave New World, the state uses selective breeding and social conditioning programs to separate the people into classes. Once separated, the state even controls the nature of social interactions by establishing social norms that lack a true sense of intimacy. The state determines all that is materially valuable. So we have to break the language down. Is that key step that we saw in an A1 that we're also seeing here in an A2. So looking a little bit further at A2, I have this kind of horrible Prezi that I created years ago that if you go to Google and just type in McBride Prezi how-to essay, you'll come across it. And this is kind of a beginning point. So you have an essay, now what? So the first step is your analysis of source. And again, the analysis is a critical step because if you do an incomplete job with the analysis, then you are stuck at 58% or less in the essay, and have your teacher explain what that means. In the source, you should be able to see either implicitly or explicitly a connection to the principles of liberalism or a connection to the principles of collectivism. Either they're reflecting or rejecting these key principles in Social 30. And it's your job to identify those connections. Does the source reflect or reject liberalism? How can we tell? Other things we can do other than breaking down the language is consider the intended audience and the intended response. And how are they getting the attention? Is it an emotional appeal? Is it an appeal to logic or ethics? Is there a alarmist tone, a sarcastic tone, a cynical tone, an optimistic tone, an informative tone? Try to understand the tone and the audience and the agenda so that you can unpack the solution to the issue that the source is presenting. Now, obviously, every source is going to have a bias and therefore be limited. You might want to look at who would be a proponent of the source, who might agree, and what evidence would they use to further the perspective of the source, but who would be an opponent, who would disagree with the source, and what is evidence that they'd use to argue against the source. This is where we often see people add in philosophers and things like that. Another thing that a student can do when they're facing an essay that they're writing is look at samples. So there are some exemplars online, and there's a link in my Prezi to many from Alberta Ed. So that's a starting point, but that's just a starting point. Moving on, we also can look at what might an exemplar of an A2 essay look like in terms of an outline. So we have this to look at together. So this prompt was: society achieves its finest expression through the self-interest and freedom of individuals. When we adopt these principles, we will lessen the need for government to interfere in our lives. So, step one, analysis of the source. What do? We identify the key terms, the key phrases, the language of the source. We identify that key language so that we can figure out what is the theme of the source. So it says things like society achieves its finest expression. Translation, finest expression means a path to a utopia. Achieves. This is not just a vision. This is a recipe. This is how do we get there. So through the self-interest. So when we see the word self-interest, we need to translate and say, okay, self-interest, that's a bedrock, that's a cornerstone, that's a foundation, a founding belief of economic liberalism. That's a part of Adam Smith's theory, laissez-faire capitalism. And as a continuation, freedom of individuals, your mind should race through things like the Canadian Charter, the U.S. Bill of Rights, through a declaration, French Declaration of the Rights of Man, basically the content of many of those extended looks that we've done at human rights in Social 10, 20, and 30. This could therefore be more than just an economic source, because human rights can be political, they can be social as well as economic. So as it is saying, both society achieves its finest expression through self-interest of individuals, that does sound economic, but also society achieves its finest expression through the freedom, the political and social freedom of individuals. When we adopt these principles, pause, what principles? Think, oh yeah, individualism, self-interest, civil liberties. We will lessen the need for government. So the key term here is lessen. It's not saying replace the need. It's not saying eliminate the need. It says we will always need government. We're just going to lessen how much government we have in our lives. So this is not a ideological perspective that's an anarchist. There's always going to be some government. To interfere in our lives. Wow, the word interfere is very harsh here, isn't it? A clear ideological perspective is found by looking at the language. So the word interfere shows us that there is a rejection of statism, a rejection of big government. The ideological perspective is clearly supporting liberalism and individualism as opposed to non-liberalism and authoritarianism. So there's a tone here. Again, the word interfere gives us a tone and maybe the motivation behind the statement. Perhaps the person quoted has been negatively impacted by government political and economic interference, and that is why the person quoted uses a confrontational term like interfere. The source is prescribing a path to a better, in his mind or her mind, future. Therefore, we can conclude that it is meant to challenge the existing relationship. So what's the purpose of the source? It's saying a better existence, better future. So this is challenging an existing relationship with the government and promoting others to rethink the role of government in their lives. The audience then would be other people, like the one who is quoted, living under a government that is interfering too much in their lives. Could be an election speech by a politician looking to decrease the role of government. Could be a political activist looking for more freedom, similar to a libertarian, but not an anarchist, as they only, again, lessen, not eliminate the need for government. What do we have an opportunity to explore here? Well, this essay is giving us an opportunity to show the marker that we understand the finest expression leads to concepts like utopia, show off our theoretical knowledge of that. That the inclusion of self-interest gives us an opportunity to clarify our need to talk about Adam Smith and the invisible hand. The inclusion of freedoms gives us a chance to talk about human rights and again highlight some of those. Lessen the need. Your thesis should try to establish when we still need the government, or if we still need the government. Because what the source is beginning is a conversation about to what extent really do we need government in our lives. And therefore, in an economic sense, we've talked in Social 30 many times, what parts of the economy warrant government intervention, and we talk about products, or we talk about industries that should be regulated. And I think from an economic standpoint, there's an opportunity to establish this is how we need government. Or from a political standpoint, you can look at individual rights and freedoms, individual ones in our fundamental rights in the Canadian Charter, or look at individual amendments to the U.S. Bill of Rights and say, under what circumstances do we need government to, protect or even maybe even limit some of these rights. So, interfere, what does government interference look like? You're going to need to establish that. What does too much government interference look like? Maybe economically, culture dependency. We can talk about things like that. Political interference, pick some rights and show when they need to be restricted and when they don't. When does the individual right to privacy need to be restricted? Under what circumstances? A hypothetical or maybe even a historical or contemporary case study that shows we normally have this freedom, but under these circumstances, create a crisis. Under these circumstances, the freedom must be restricted, but also establish how by removing that freedom, something is lost between the relationship between government and governed. So, next step after you analyze the source, you would get into thesis creation. And I like to promote thesis statements that have an although, but, therefore. Although, there's this, but there's this, therefore we kind of need this. So here we have although in general individualism is favorable to collectivism, due to the limitations of mankind, there will remain a need for government. So it's very clear, and it gives us an opportunity to explore many different points of view and case studies here. So for example, in your body, your A1 is, in general, political individualism is better than political collectivism. And you can look at all of these things. Life under a tyrant creates a dystopia. Hitler, Stalin, Robespierre, political techniques of dictatorship created a dystopia. There's been a progressive and just evolution towards the expansion of civil liberties is another supporting argument. And we have a whole bunch of stuff underneath that too, including the civil rights movement. A2, in general, economic individualism is better than economic collectivism. And you can see a list of things that we can explore there. A3, economic self-interest is limited, so we need government. And tons of little case studies there in terms of how greed can corrupt and end up creating a lack of sustainability. A4, mankind can be dangerous, so we need government. Government must interfere and limit the lives of irrational and violent individuals. So one thing to take into consideration when we create a thesis statement is that this is not the end of your argumentation of your paper. This is just the umbrella under which all your argumentation must fit. But there can be supporting argumentative statements, as you can see below, listed as A1, A2, A3, and A4, and even this one here. So one of the tragic weaknesses of papers across this province is that after the thesis statement, students just want to give us a report. This is all the evidence I know that might fit into this topic, but I'm not really going to connect it back to any one argument. Please let your argumentation drive your paper, and your paper will be much stronger because of it. So that's just one example of an outline. We have other exemplars of great essays here as well. Exemplars from the province, exemplars from in-house stuff that we've created. So again, here's an exemplar about an essay about self-reliance. To what extent should individuals be self-reliant? We have to define key terms like self-reliance, and we have to, explore the significance of it. We have to outline the multitude of opinions before we jump into a position. That's kind of an old prompt with a to what extent, though. We're going to see something more typical to the one that we saw before with an issue and a solution. We do need to identify that the essay is an opportunity to explore a bigger issue. So here we have some economic essay hints. So economic essays. We should see that all economic essays relate to a larger question about the purpose of life. If the purpose is, as the ancient Greek claimed, to live a good life, then would it be logical to assume that a good life can be defined as the life of freedom, and freedom is the absence of want and need as a consequence of the fulfillment of our hierarchy of needs? And if that's the case, then what's the best path to that freedom? Is it freedom through or freedom from government? The purpose of the economy is to organize scarce resources to help address the wants and needs of the people. But this creates a discussion as to what role the government should play in this process. Do we gain freedom from the government, or do we gain freedom when the government practices a hands-off approach? So there's definitely opportunities within those sources to unpack new things. And ultimately, the strongest essays seem to find nuances in the middle. They don't argue absolutes. They see those cracks in things like the American dream and see how that individualism and collectivism both have some merits, but also have some flaws, and therefore we need some kind of mix. We need some kind of a response that allows us to adopt the best of both. We can prepare for future essays by understanding the bigger issues as we're learning the content. So in Social 30, the biggest issue is, what is your ideal government? So I give my Social 30s this term project where we look at every old essay prompt. Here's the inquiry, and for each inquiry we break it down. What's the key goal of the essay prompt? What are the challenges to the goal? What's the solution, which is the ideological perspective? What's some related vocab, but what's the bias? What's missing here? And then they can break it down to argumentation and evidence. And you can see that it's a time-consuming process, but by doing this before the actual essay, you can be better prepared, because what you're going to end up seeing is, man, this theme keeps repeating. The common theme in 30 is about the role of government and the role between the government and the governed, the struggle between freedom and security, the evolution of liberalism. How much control should the state take politically and economically, especially during times of crisis? These are reoccurring themes here. So another way to get started on an essay is to, don't wait till the essay to get started. You need to be thinking about the theme as you're learning the content of the course. And each day you're being introduced to new evidence and new argumentation and new vocabulary and new individuals that can help you unpack future essays. So when students tell me that they struggle on an essay, my answer is often, well, you're struggling on the essay because you're struggling in class. You're struggling day to day linking the content together. So the thing that you need to keep considering is, what's the theme of this course? What are we learning? How does it all fit together? So that's the big picture stuff. All essays connect back to one thing, and that's the discussion about the nature of mankind. If man is blank, then we should blank. If man is irrational, then we need to be regulated. If man is rational and reasonable, then maybe the invisible hand can be a cornerstone of an economy. So all essays do relate back to some kind of psychological, philosophical discussion about the nature of man. If we are characterized by these qualities, then what kind of government and what kind of relationship with the state can we have? And that's what's shown here with this Prezi. And again, if you just go to Google and type in McBride Prezi Greed, you'll get a link to this one. And this Prezi is breaking down that idea. Man is irrational and selfish, therefore the best political economic system is authoritarianism. So that's the prompt, right? Here's the problem: man is irrational and selfish. Here's the solution. Authoritarianism, it's quite clear, but how do we unpack it? As you go through the steps of this source, you'll see that I unpack it in a very complicated way. I go back and talk about, is man evil? Evil's a perspective, and we go down that rabbit hole a little bit. So that's another way to get started on an essay as well. Here's a political source that shows argumentation. So here's a possible thesis statement. Although liberty is desirable, there are times when freedoms cannot be absolute. The danger becomes that in the name of security, freedom might be lost and the state might become dystopian. Therefore, we need a state powerful enough to restrict freedom when necessary, but also a citizenry active enough to shape their relationship with their government. That's a thesis statement that you might be able to plug and play with nearly every essay in Social 30. So here are some related arguments. Liberty is desirable. And we unpack that there a little bit. There are times when freedoms cannot be absolute. The danger becomes that in the name of security, we lose liberty and drift into controlled dystopias. Therefore, we need a powerful enough state, but also an active citizenry. Can you see how comprehensive that is? That it gives us an opportunity to talk about the entire Social 30 course. Show off your knowledge, but also shape together the argumentation into something that's quite compelling, quite convincing, quite insightful and judicious. These are the qualities of an e-paper. So another way to perform well on a paper is don't go into an essay with no idea what kind of thesis statement you could have. Have some ideas, somewhat pre-planned. If I want to write a political paper defending democracy or defending authoritarianism, or an economic paper defending capitalism or attacking capitalism, what kind of supporting arguments and evidence and language am I going to use? So lots of cool things to think about there. All right, so we've looked at quite a few things here together already, and I don't want to overwhelm you too much. So we do have a couple other guides that are available through your teacher here at WCHS, and we can definitely show you those as well. But I think the logical next step is for me to specifically go through one together with you, and that'll be on the next video.